It's good to brew, baby. What is up, it's one Millsy? Back at home at Town Commander. We're back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version of 1.0 deck list of the Commander in front of us on my quest to outbrew a magic world. We are continuing OTGA content, and it's been a ton of fun. There's so many cool legendaries, and today we are back with Rakdos the Muscle. Our next Rakdos card, a 5-mana 6/5 Demon Mercenary, so he is an outlaw for all you players putting together outlaw decks. Flying and trample. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, exile cards equal to its mana value from the top of target player's library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards, and mana of any type may be spent to cast those spells. And sacrifice another creature, it gains indestructible on a turn, tap it, activate only once each turn. So Rakdos has a ton of interesting text on it. You can sack a creature to exile cards from the top of anyone's library, not just your own. Until your next end step, you can play them and cast mana of any color, and we can sack creatures to give it indestructible, which is a great ability and could potentially protect Rakdos. So we're gonna talk about some of the creatures we want to sacrifice. We're gonna talk about some real effect payoffs we can get from sacrificing creatures. We'll talk about ways to get our creatures back if we want to sacrifice them again, and then we'll talk about some ways we can take advantage of casting those things from exile and getting some value for it. So what can we sacrifice? Well, we have creatures like Atsushi and Fury that both have interesting abilities, when they come in or when they die. Atsushi says when it dies, we can either exile the top 2 of our library and play those cards to the end of our next turn, or create 3 treasures. And Fury has a fun ability where we can evoke it, meaning we can pitch a red card from our hand to have it come in but be immediately sacrificed, and we can actually, in response to its trigger, sacrifice it and get value while still getting its ETB 4 damage if that's what we want to do. Feld in the Third Path is one of a couple cards in the deck that are going to allow us to create a token that's a copy of a creature card in our graveyard, except it's an artifact and usually without the type. And when we do this, it should copy its mana value onto the creature, meaning that we can then sacrifice that for Rakdos' effect. Jax's Tormaker does something very similar, except it's a creature we control, meaning that we can take advantage of copying the creatures we really want to copy and copying them again. Junji works very similar to Atsushi. When it dies, it has 2 pretty cool abilities. Either each opponent discards 2 cards and loses 2, or we put a non-dragon creature from our graveyard back onto the battlefield and we lose 2 life. This can help get things back after they die and allow us to kind of sacrifice them again and keep using its value. The Poxwalkers are fun because whenever we cast a spell from anywhere in their hand, they come back from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped, meaning that they're going to kind of always be available for Rakdos to sacrifice as long as we're casting those things from exile, and then we could sacrifice Poxwalkers again. Resettling Skeleton is very similar. We can pay 1 and a black to just bring it back from the graveyard to the battlefield, meaning we could use it for that effect. Shriek Maw is another one of these cards where we can evoke it, get the ability to destroy a non-artifact, non-black creature, and then sacrifice it to exile. Solemn Simulacrum seems fun, coming in and getting us a basic land, and then whenever it dies, we can draw a card, a great target to copy, because we're going to then get both of those abilities, and get them when they die. The Balrog Durin's Bane seems pretty fun. Costs 1 less for each permanent sacrifice this turn, and when it dies, we destroy target artifact or creature, and then we could obviously bring it back with some of those relevant abilities. And then we have some ways to interact with our opponent's things. Molten Duplication can make a copy of one of our things, but Take for a Ride and some other cards we have that can actually take our opponent's things and gain control of them until end of turn, and then we could sacrifice them to Rakdos' effect for getting value out of them. But how do we get payoffs for sacrificing? Well, we have things like Illuminator Xeris, who could just give us black mana equal to the sacrificed creature's mana value. And this is great because then we get that mana, Rakdos exiles the cards, and then we could play them with that black mana we just got. Pitiless Plunder makes treasures every time one of our creatures dies. Yawgmoth can actually sacrifice creatures to put -1/-1 counters onto our opponent's creatures and draw cards, which can kind of help to get them down to 0 toughness and make them die that way. We have things like Brass's Tunnel Grinder, which whenever we descend, so whenever a permanent is put into our graveyard, we put a counter on it. Then if there's 3 or more counters on it, we remove it and transform it. And then on the backside, we can discover when when we cast things. Grave Pack, whenever one of our creatures dies, each other player sacrifices a creature. This could get pretty out of hand depending on how set up we are, because then our opponents may just not be able to have creatures on the battlefield as our side just gets bigger and bigger. And then Rakdos joins up. When it comes in, we get a creature back with 2+1/+1 counters, and then whenever a legendary creature we control dies, it deals damage equal to that creature's power to target opponent, meaning that if we have a legendary creature, we can recur and keep sacrificing, we could deal some damage to our opponents. But as recursion goes, there's some interesting ways we can do this. We can use things like Persist or Reanimate to just put a creature from the graveyard back onto the battlefield. We have things like Feign Death and Malakir Rebirth to say the next time a creature would die, it comes back. And this is a great ability because then we can kind of take real advantage of that creature dying, but also still being around. Saw in Half is a fun card. Destroy target creature, and if that creature dies this way, its controller creates 2 tokens that are copies of it, except their base power is and toughness are halved, and we round up each time. This is interesting for some of our creatures because it's not power we care about, it's mana value. And of course, we can hit something non-legendary with this, we could just get more things sacrificed. And then Friction Reclamation, just to pay the 2 mana and 2 life, bring a creature back to our hand to play again and use again if need be. As far as exile payoffs go, there's a couple ways we could do this. Keeper of the Secrets deals damage equal to an opponent equal to the mana value of a spell we cast from anywhere other than our hands. So as we're getting these things from exile, we're dealing damage that way. Nalfeshni is going to copy spells we cast from exile, so that's pretty great. Magic Sorcerer says the first spell we cast each turn from exile has Cascade, allowing us to get into more things from our deck. Passion Archaeologist has a very similar effect to that Keeper of Secrets, dealing damage whenever we cast spells from exile. And then Prosper is kind of the best of both worlds, right? We get a treasure every time we play a card from exile, and then we could put a card into exile at the end of our turn that we could play until the end of our next turn. Of course, Prosper, very popular commander in its own right, but I like that it slots here and could just help us out, especially if Rakdos really gets focused down. It becomes too hard to play. But I've said it before on this show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever done. This is just my version 1.0 of the deck, and I probably missed some things, but these were the 3 cards that I really wanted in the deck. I just couldn't find the slot for, but I think they're worth mentioning. The first is Carrion Feeder. This is a sack outlet that we could sack a creature to put a counter on it. It could be important, depending on if you wanted to go more of a tokens route, go into more aristocrats. I think Carrion Feeder might be good for that. But the other 2, I think, just feel really good for what this deck is trying to do. Tevesh Saad says that we can +1 sack another creature or planeswalker. If you do, draw 2 cards and draw another card if the sacrified permanent was a commander. Again, a way to draw cards and generate value. And then when you get to -10, you get to take everybody's commanders under your control. And then Ob Nixilis has Casualty X, where X is the creature whose power is X that you sacrifice to get a copy of it. And the copy isn't legendary and is starting loyalty X. Basically, with the first one, you would make a devil, and the second one, you basically start making players discard down. But Ob Nixilis just becomes a fun way to casualty something in and get real value. Casualty when it comes in and get something real value from it while still sacrificing something that we care about sacrificing. But getting into our playtest here, we see a Talisman, Arcane Signet, Dark Ritual hand. I don't believe this is a turn 1 Rakdos, but it should certainly be a turn 2 Rakdos by my count. We're going to Dark Ritual here, get that Talisman down, use the extra there in that to get Arcane Signet down. And now we have 3 mana going into turn 2. Turn 2 here at 4 mana, so we're just 1 off of Rakdos. Love the idea of getting some things down. Knife Point isn't bad. Yawgmoth's probably not bad to get down here at this point. Again, we want to just probably contribute something to the board. I don't mind Yawgmoth here. If we draw a land, then it's Rakdos. Otherwise, we just continue to put more things down. Maybe we put the Knife Point down here and wait for our 5th mana. Oh boy, we can keep that Chaos Warp up, and maybe we put the Reassembling Skeleton down. Sacking the creature, put a -1/-1 counter would actually count as a crime, so we could get another token and start having the risk for that. So I think on my opponent's turn, it's probably what I do. Sacrifice the skeleton, give something a -1/-1 and draw a card, get a Mercenary, just allow us to get more things into our hand. And we get our 5th land, but it's a tap land, unfortunately. But that's okay, we just jam us at Sushi down here. So it's a number we commit a crime, we make a mercenary, meaning we can always be putting this mercenary into Yawgmoth to put that down and get another card. So that's what I would do. Sacrifice it, get one back, lose a life, draw a card, we get another land. Get our, now we got 6, I would probably slam Rakdos down here now. Now thankfully it has, it doesn't have haste, but because of the, or sorry, it doesn't have haste, but when it eventually can attack it, that's first strike because of that knife point. I kind of like the idea of sacrificing at Sushi now to Yawgmoth. Giving something a -1/-1, drawing a card, but we would make 3 treasures with that Sushi. That way next turn we could potentially take a big turn. But what it also will do here is, because we didn't use all of our mana on Rakdos, we have 1 left, we'd pick an opponent, exile the top 4 cards of their library, and maybe play something. If not, we just milled our opponents for 4, and we get that mercenary back. And I like this. Now we're in the right situation where we're, playing things, or we can get things back, start exiling our opponent's things. Rakdos is going to start hitting in the air, and dealing with that. Yawgmoth can take some things out of the way. I like this, and I think we're in a solid state to keep going and try to get more value. Here we've got a 3-lander with Soul Ring, right, which is never a bad start. Turn 1 Dark Ritual again. I like the idea of the Black Cleave Cliffs here. Get the Soul Ring down. Turn 2, if we play this Foreboding Ruins, we should be able to go Dark Ritual into Rakdos turn 2. Probably the first time I played my 5-mana commander turn 2, but hey, we'll take it. And now this sets us up for some more turns. Turn 3, 6 mana. Get down the Skeleton and maybe that Tunnel Grinder, start getting that worked up. Turn 4, we don't see a land, but that's okay. I kind of like the Pluto's Plunder, sack the Reassembling Skeleton. Well, maybe we attack with Rakdos and we can always sack the Skeleton to it if we need to make it indestructible. But so I kind of want to do it anyway, just to get that treasure. And Tunnel Grinder goes off, getting a counter. We missed the trigger, I realized, but that's okay. That would get a counter on it. And then on a future turn, we could, pay 2 to get Reassembling Skeleton back if we want to. This turn we see a Black Market Connection is a great card to give us more value. I like the idea of maybe getting something like Felden down, because now we can start making copies of Reassembling Skeleton if we want to, or other cards that go to our graveyard. That is 2 mana left. Maybe we get Skeleton back that way. And we could always sacrifice it here to get another token on the Tunnel Grinder, maybe nuke somebody else for 2 cards, see if we can play something. If not, we're just kind of chipping away. And then, that would get us another treasure. So now we have these kind of laying around that we can use. Here I don't mind the idea of like trying to take a ride somebody's creature and use it to sacrifice. Get the Black Market Connections down. And then, take somebody's thing and maybe sacrifice it and get some more value, get another treasure. We won't get the Tunnel Grinder trigger in that sense because it's actually a creature that we took, right? So it doesn't go to our graveyard, but we still get the treasure, and Rakdos still, mill somebody or exile somebody for that many cards. Maybe we play something. And again, now it's all going to come down to what are our opponents giving us off the top? What can we get from there? And kind of leveraging that to put our game plan forward. But let me know, what do you think of Rakdos? Down in the comments section below. It's an interesting deck. I think it all comes down to where you want to spin it, whether it's towards aristocrats, whether it's toward stealing your opponent's things, or I think there's a lot of other ways to take it. And I think that's what I like about Rakdos, is it looks straightforward, but I think there's ways you can put your flavor on it. I also like that Rakdos is now going to become a pretty good piece in a lot of your like Jund Sacrifice decks. It's probably really good there in helping to keep down your opponents and do that. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys next time.